I used to have the hardest time when I first started learning how to paint flesh tones. There's so much information out there, so much complexity, and honestly, so much incomplete or clumsy information that I eventually became so frustrated that for a time I believed I was actually colorblind. It wasn't until I started using the principles of the palette I'm going to show you in this video today that I was able to fully grasp the complexity and fine nuance that we're all looking for in our paintings of people. So if you're having trouble mixing flesh colors with oil paint or really any other paint, or you're running into garish, cartoony color with your skin tones, I can help you fix all that using Rembrandt's palette. So many students I've worked with, and this includes myself, have learned using the popular Impressionist palette. In other words, a full color palette including all the primaries and usually a lot more other colors. While this can definitely work, I find many students have difficulty controlling the wide gamut, wide variety of colors that can be created when we add the complications of blues and greens and purples when trying to paint skin tones, which are naturally always in the orange hue family. Rembrandt called the earth colors the friendly colors, and that's exactly what this palette is. It's an earth color palette, utilizing all the iron oxides, the siennas, the umbers, and the ochres. And once you start using this palette, I think you'll understand why he called it that. If you'd like to learn more about the logic and reasoning behind why I can even dare to call this the Rembrandt palette, be sure to check out my first video on this subject, linked in the description below. But anyway, this is a perfect palette for painting any skin tone under natural conditions, with few exceptions. Some people may balk at the idea of a flesh tone palette, but before you discount it, give it a shot. All the old masters had specific palettes for painting specific parts of the painting, including flesh. Now, this was more a result of the inconvenience of having to mull your own paints, but nonetheless, we can use their limitations to our advantage. Oh, additionally, I'm going to show you the most efficient way to start practicing and learning these principles, namely by doing tons of the exercise I'll be showing here. Basically small, quick, gestural color studies of old master paintings, which you can start practicing today. If you take away anything from this video, I ask you to do 40 of these small color studies from old master paintings. It will change your life. I'm sure of it. All right, so taking a look at the palette, and if you haven't seen the previous video, I'll go over the colors real quick. There's a red lake. That's a generic term for transparent red. And what I'm using here is a alizarin claret by Michael Harding, but any alizarin is going to do, or a rose color. I find they're pretty interchangeable. Sometimes I want the kind of cooler, darker alizarin. Sometimes I want the kind of brighter rose color. It doesn't matter that much. I prefer the permanent version versus the more traditional and fugitive natural version. So we have Mars Red Light here. This is a Williamsburg color. What we're looking for is like a brick red color. It is a very common color in old master palettes. So things like Terra Rosa, Venetian Red, etc. But I like Mars Red because it's a little bit stronger. It's a synthetic iron oxide. Van Dyke Brown, this is Michael Harding. This is our redder dark neutral. This is raw umber. This is our yellow dark neutral. This is Ivory Black. This is our blue dark neutral. Here we have raw sienna, and this is Mars Yellow Light. And this is just like with Mars Red Light, it's a synthetic iron oxide, and it's a little bit higher tinting strength than what it's imitating, which is yellow ochre, natural yellow ochre. And here is the lead white replacement. The recipe and how to make this, super simple, is linked in the description below. It imitates lead white very well, like maybe 90%. It's not exactly like lead white, but it does a very good job. It doesn't have the expense of lead and is non-toxic as well. So the idea of this palette is we have our reds on this side, our yellows kind of here. We have our black over here, just in case we need to get a really cool blue, maybe a purplish color, maybe a greenish color. Very rarely do we ever need an actual purple, green, or blue for flesh tone in natural light. And the only exception would be if we have a large skylight, a large north-facing light with just pure blue sky. That's going to bring a lot of blue light. If we're outside, we're getting the warm sunlight hitting us. The sunlight's bouncing off of some grass on the ground. That green light's going to bounce into the shadow underneath. We can get like a green color there. We can maybe have some blue bouncing off our head from the secondary, the light from the sky. But definitely in most indoor situations where we don't have a large north light with a clear blue sky, we're not going to see a lot of blue, green, or purple. Now, this may also raise some shackles. I remember when I first learned about mixing flesh tones that blues and greens and purples were extremely important in making flesh tones. I found that it was very, very difficult to try to get flesh tones that weren't very cartoony or overly colorful by mixing those. I find it much more friendly to work with colors that are already low chroma, like our skin is. Our skin is, we have pretty low chroma skin. It's not orange. You know, it's an orange hue, but it's not bright orange like an orange. It's not bright red like an apple. It's not bright yellow like a banana, but it is in that gamut of red to yellow. It's somewhere in that gamut of red to yellow. Every single skin tone on my face is in the gamut of red to yellow. It may be a very low chroma red, like you see in my eyes here, my eyeshadows. It may be a very low chroma kind of orange, very low chroma, maybe nearly gray, nearly pure neutral gray orange on the highlight up here. You're seeing a lot more red around my nose right here. Probably seeing a little more yellows around the center part of the face here. You're trying to see a little more yellow up in the forehead. But we're talking about like an analogous color palette here. We can think of this analogous color palette as a sort of stepping stone. It doesn't. We can use this for our entire career and paint paintings with a palette like this. Or once we're very comfortable with this sort of tonalist analogous palette, a value-based palette, we can start adding blues and greens and use those to increase our creative expression. But I find that most students have the biggest problem not with color, but with value and drawing and edges and brushwork and composition and everything. So I highly recommend sticking in a sort of tonalist palette like this for as long as possible till you really starting to nail that drawing aspect of painting portraits and painting people. Color isn't the problem. It's never the problem. It's never ever the problem. It really isn't. It really isn't. It really isn't. You know, it really isn't, guys. It's always value. It's always value. By the way, if you end up enjoying this video, please consider joining me and over 700 students so far by signing up for my Learning from the Masters Rembrandt video course. Learn everything I know about Rembrandt's oil painting methods and most importantly, how to apply them to your own work and practice. Over 17 plus hours of instruction. Link in the description below. So I want to jump into a little bit of a demo here. We're going to be doing a quick little gesture sketch of this girl at the window painting by Rembrandt. Now I want to preface that just because I'm calling this a Rembrandt palette certainly doesn't mean we can only paint Rembrandt's colors with it. We can pretty much paint any of Rembrandt's portraits colors with it, but we can paint pretty much any other old masters or even up to the modern 19th century masters. So I have my value scale here. It's a sort of a casual value scale. This is where I'll be lowering the chroma of all our colors here. Starting with like a pinky gray color just for a quick little block in of our face. Just going to do it on the palette here. We just want to do a quick little gesture. It's not going to look exactly like the painting. Oh, one color I missed. Trans oxide brown. I do like this color. Or trans oxide red. One of its main functions is like we can add it to the black, and the ivory black. The organic blacks take forever to dry, whether it's ivory or lamp or whatever. So adding a quick drying paint like that that's also transparent will make it a little more transparent, but it'll also make it dry faster. We can also add this to our Van Dyke brown, which is very opaque, and it can help make a little bit more of a translucent dark when we need it. The reason I like translucent darks at times, especially dark accents, is that they kind of recede back into the picture plane, where an opaque color kind of comes forward. It's like it sits right on the picture plane. So thinking of if the picture plane was a piece of glass and we had the girl in the window sitting back 10 feet, we want to create that illusion that she's sitting back 10 feet. If we apply an opaque color, it kind of just sits right on the surface and it looks like it's on the glass and not in the picture. So with a more transparent color, for whatever reason, I think it's because of like the micro variety of texture, of visual texture that translucent color creates. It makes it appear atmospheric and it makes it shoot back in space a little bit. I love these. I'm going to start with something like a shadow color for the eye sockets here. I've always liked this. These are really opaque shadow colors in these eye sockets. they're very flat, very opaque, and these aren't dark accents like I was just talking about. These are shadows. These are form shadows mostly. So they're a little bit different. I think the reason this works, I think, traditionally we always think of shadows as needing to be transparent, not opaque. But you see in Rembrandt's paintings, particularly after his earlier periods, he would often use pretty opaque shadow colors in the form shadows of the face. I think one way he's getting away with that is that the light shapes have a ton of texture and variety going on. So it makes sense that we want the shadow texture to be different than the light texture. We don't want them to look exactly the same. We want them to be like they're two different environments, two different worlds. So he's doing that. If we had as much texture, a much visual texture in the shadows of these eye sockets here, I think it may take away from it. It may look a little bit corny or too textured. He's really creating that sense of light by differentiating light and shadow, really pushing the differentiation between light and shadow, not only with value, but also with texture, visual texture. So I'm going with I mix some of the raw sienna, some of the Mars red into our gray mixture here, because I'm getting this kind of neutral-ish orange. So I'm mixing an orange, neutralizing it with the gray. There's this really nice sort of greenishness, nearly green. It's greenish. It's not green, but it's greenish. Whenever we see something that's green, it's a clue that we're dealing with a low chroma yellow in most cases. All right, so we're gonna look to bang in some of the light, some of our general lights here. All hues or all flesh colors, no matter what nationality, is going to be some version of red to yellow, a low chroma red yellow. So somewhere around an orange. Some skin colors steer more red, some steer more yellow. Some are lighter, some are darker. But the color of the melanin, the pigmentation that is sort of sitting between the skin cells and within the nucleus of the skin cells, is generally the same color. And it's sometimes a little more yellow, sometimes a little more red. We can dip into this Mars yellow if we feel like we need a little more chroma. It'll give us a little bit stronger of a peachy chroma. We're going to try to be real loose here because I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. So, there's no way I'm going to get an accurate likeness or faithful rendering here of this. So I might as well try to make it look at least cool and practice some brushwork, brushwork design. These kind of gestural color studies are a good idea for getting familiar with color, getting familiar with mixing paint, not getting too precious. Preciousness is one of those things. Particular personality types of students, some get very, very precious and want to spend months and months and months on the same project, where it's like they really just need to move on to the next thing, get that mileage in. Dipped into the so far I've just been mixing the red and yellow into the grays. Again, thinking about that orange idea, we're mixing an orange in the gray. I have some variety going on where there's a little bit redder here, a little bit yellower here, so I'm dipping in to both sides as I sort of sense a little bit more yellow towards the lightest light, a little more, it's getting a little bit more on average, a little bit redder towards the halftones, a little bit grayer towards the halftones as well. But also, I dipped into some of that trans oxide brown because we have some of this hair cast shadow that's coming down here. Those tend to be pretty kind of warm. Those translucent cast shadows of translucent objects like that. We can even dip into some of this straight gray color from our raw umber and white. If we feel like our color is getting a little too garish, get a little bit of gray in there, introduce a little bit of gray, so we can get that optical mixing, that like pointillist mixing that happens. You see so much of this in Rembrandt's paintings, is that when you look up close, you see grays, pinks, yellows, a little bit of peaches, but they're very distinct color patches. And when you stand back, you see that general kind of Caucasian flesh tone. We can throw down some thicker impasto. It's as of course, there's going to be a part of me that feels like it's an affront to Rembrandt to interpret this much, but I mean, it's just a color study. What do you want? What do you want from me? Color study. This is all I can do. So we can dip into some of that black plus white for some of this cool highlight. Forehead plane here. Can just give us a little bit of variety and get us out of an overly sort of peachy color harmony, whatever we want to call it. She has these really nice, like super peachy or super red cheeks here. So now I've dipped into the alizarin. The alizarin plus Mars red makes a really nice red. What's really cool about working on this dark ground here of the panel is we can apply paint thinly and we get that scumble effect, and we get this translucent color effect that looks like a glaze, or has that sort of like that indirect look, even though we're painting very directly. It's like a pure yellow plus white can get us pretty close to these kind of nearly greenish hues we're seeing here in the flesh. If we want them to go even further, we can mix a little bit of the black and white, but we can make ourselves a little bit of a pretty profound green. I don't believe it's like truly a green. I still believe it's a low chroma yellow, but it's getting pretty close to a green, yellowish green sensation, I should say. It's a yellow green sensation. I would still argue that this is not a true green. So this our Mars red plus Van Dyke makes a nice brown, like a burnt umbery brown. I'm not going to spend a ton of time in the hair. The hair would easily take more time than the portrait, in my opinion. But I want to get some of that hairline in. Every color decision I'm making is based off of the separation of light and shadow. So I want my shadows, everything in my shadows, to be around like this range. I'm not going to mix anything from my shadow above this range. Same with the lights. I'm not going to mix anything that's in the lights lower on the value scale here. We complicate that at our peril. If we really don't want to intermix these, or else we get that over model look. It looks corny. It looks photographic. If you don't want your paintings to look like a photograph, which I don't, then you really don't want to over model in the shadows in particular, in the lights as well, though. Too many values in the shadow, too many values in the light is a surefire way to get that over model kind of photorealistic look. So like I said, I'm gonna try. I want to at least try to make it look cool if I can, and not just look like a sloppy mess. Sloppy, poorly drawn mess. I mean, I achieve that. I'll at least hopefully get a color statement that is at least somewhat convincing. Got the bridge of our nose settling in here, pushing it in. Seems a little bit shorter than an adult. I think that's pretty true. I don't draw a lot of kids, to be honest, but the nose, the bridge of the nose should be shorter. The younger they get, should be even it gets closer and closer together. as we age, the features sort of stretch out a little bit. Really pushing that gray. And since I have it here, I might as well push it up here so that I can have this sense of the big form. So I have halftone here. I should have had to have halftone here. The halftones are really hard to see because they're close to the shadow, and by way of simultaneous contrast, it's an optical illusion. Our brain's very bad at seeing how dark that halftone is, but they're very hard to see. So it's good to just know. Eventually we have to learn to know, because we can't fully rely upon our eyes because of that simultaneous contrast illusion that happens to all of us. We have to know that the halftones are a little bit darker than we think they are. Getting that green in there really does a lot. This is like, it's kind of opening my eyes here. Like sometimes I feel like I get a little bit overly peachy, but some of this green is just looking really cool to me. I always learn something new. Anytime I do one of these things, anytime I study an old painting, I learn something, I pick something up, or I absorb something, I absorb some special power. Can't recommend the master studying enough. Even these quick ones, man. I mean, that's how efficient is that? It's been maybe like 20 minutes or so. I'm already picking up a nice little juicy nugget of information. I may forget it in a few minutes, but it may absorb too. We don't know what's going to stick to us and what's going to just pass. And the things that stick to us are really the important things. If they weren't important, then they're not going to stick to us. They weren't important to us in particular. I saw this, there was something about Stephen King. He was saying he doesn't use a notebook. He said a notebook is a place to save bad ideas. What he means by that is the good ideas should stick with you. You shouldn't have to remember them by looking back at a notebook. That's it. That's the whole story. But I think it really does relate to when we're doing master studies. The good stuff, the stuff that is us, is going to stick to us. We don't need to try to remember every single thing that stands out as, oh, that's cool. Whatever is prominent to us, whatever is salient to us, it's going to come through in the end. And we have this sort of bag of the eye structure here below the lower lid. Creates a nice diagonal on both sides. Obviously our faces aren't perfectly symmetrical, but they're mostly symmetrical. Man, this is such a cool painting. I'm learning so much from this. I find it very difficult to work with, to work kind of loose brushwork, wild brushwork like this with a delicate subject like a beautiful woman or a child like this. Using this aggressive brushwork doesn't always quite make sense. It can make him look old or whatever. And he's not allowing like pock marks like you see here, which this particular lead white, or this lead white replacement, really does a good job of making. You see a lot of these pock marks in his other paintings of older people, so we really want to make sure that we get these pock marks out. But they look really good with a more aged subject without having to go in and paint all those little liver spots or freckles or whatever the heck they are. So still I'm being careful not to go in and start rendering anything, because I just ain't got time for all that. Not with this quick, this gestural study here. If I go in and try to start rendering something, that's like committing me to something that's going to be a lot more work. And it's going to take like 3 hours to make that nose look good. Instead of just trying to make some cool little marks here that look interesting, or at least passably designed and passably proportional. So our mouth color is sort of a darkish, reddish, but not too red color. Not like a purpley red like I'm kind of getting here. So we can kind of gesture some of this in. I think I got it a little bit high there. It's hard to tell until I get that muzzle shape in. because judging how far down that mouth is the judgment of how far down that mouth is coming from how much muzzle shape we have. I don't want to panic and go push the mouth down if I actually need to push the nose up. Instead, it is a do we want to lower the bridge or raise the water question. We have that cool shadow shape under the lower lip here. It's basically the same color as our eye socket shadow shape. The variety in this painting is phenomenal. This is a really good thing to study. If you're looking to get a little bit more variety in your flesh tones, even with like such a simple palette that we're using here, because we just see how much variety he's really pushing, very far in the yellow scale, very far in the red scale. A lot of these really nice neutrals in the mouth, and everything in between, the sort of the peachy low chroma color that sort of stitches everything together. Getting in some of this shadow color here. Don't worry, I'm gonna start making her look too much like a Cabbage Patch Kid. Any 80s kids will know what I'm talking about. Everyone else will probably have no idea. So the lower portion of our face, it's not apparent on me because I have a beard, but the lower portion of our face has this general diagonal back in towards our neck. So in most lighting situations, particularly this, where we have a light above, we have a light from above, everything below the nose is going to progressively get a little bit less light down there. So I've already made it a little bit too light, which is I pretty much always do because of that simultaneous contrast. We have to overcome that by way of knowledge. So I just need to darken that a little bit, so to push that back in space and probably make it a little more gray, a little more greenish gray, so we can add our yellow to our raw umber here. And if that is making like an overly tan color not quite green enough, I'll step up to the Van Dyke. Yellow ochre or Mars yellow. I interchange those names, Mars yellow and Van Dyke brown. See if that will make it green enough. Still not quite doing it. So we can use our black here and really raw umber now because we're getting darker. So I would still want it to be pretty yellow. Not a super blue green. Some of this light peaking at the corner of the mouth here could be about the same value, maybe a little bit darker than the one on this side. There's a lot going on. We have the white from the cloth here, bouncing some reflected light in here. Now it's that will never ever ever be as light as anything in the light. Very important to remember. Reflected light is just not going to be as light as anything is in the light. So if we're going to try to push for that reflected light here, I'm just going to go for a gray because it looks pretty neutral, maybe a little bit. It appears green, and like I don't know if I have said this, but if it appears green, it's a low chroma yellow. If it appears purple, it's a low chroma red. If it appears blue, it's a very neutral orange, or very neutral, neutral orange, or even like an absolute neutral. This just keeps things way more simple. If we add one color, if we add blue, ultramarine blue, if we add viridian, we've opened up our color gamut immensely, like exponentially, where this is just like a sliver of color that we're dealing with, and we're really learning to push that very fine nuance with it that flesh tone really requires if we're going for something kind of, more realistic or whatever you want to call that, and not like kind of very impressionistic. Which I don't have anything against I don't think I have anything against the Impressionists. Sometimes I get a little annoyed, but I'm mostly I like a lot of the more really when it comes to impressionism, I like more of like the 20th century and beyond, like the newer impressionists, like say Richard Schmid or P. Allen Lawson. He's insane. He's so good, such a good landscape painter. I get the impression, and from what I understand about Monet, who I believe is a genius, absolutely, but he was attempting to emulate light, and the result was this very kind of sloppy painting, like, or sloppy is like the negative, but it's this very loose, sloppy, broken color painting. He was trying to emulate that vibrational effect of light, but he was still trying to emulate what he sees. It wasn't like a style that he was going for. It was a truth to nature kind of thing, in a very true sense. And there's some evidence that he may have had degeneration in his eyes. I don't know how true that is, but definitely later in his life. It's still interesting to think of, like, if that was the result of his early impressionist paintings was a defect in his eye, and it became a popular thing. A lot of people sort of replicated that style as a result of an eye disorder. This white in the shirt here is, at least on my monitor, has that kind of greenishness to it. So I'm gonna mess with that and kind of play with that a little bit in terms of our kind of greenish mixture here. There's this funny kind of motivation, this feeling that I have which is an unfortunate byproduct of like the sort of social media world that we live in, where I really want this. There's a part of me who wants this to look cool, so like I can use it in the thumbnail and people will click it, and then also people will make fun of me because it looks so sloppy. But the purpose of this, like, generally shouldn't be that it's like it looks super sick, It should be that I'm just showing an idea, a concept, a tutorial on how to mix color with this earth color palette, and to show, hopefully to inspire you to use it and see how much you can get out of it. Very similar to the Zorn palette. It's a similar concept. It's an analogous yellow, red, limited color palette. There's a lot you can get out of that color palette as well. A lot more than people, I think, often think. If you're used to mixing color with a full palette, and you're always lowering chroma with a complementary, it may take a little bit to get used to this palette because you often don't need to lower chroma like that. So you may end up with a little bit overly gray mixtures because you'll have that muscle memory of lowering chroma, wanting to lower chroma with another color instead of just allowing it to be lowered by the grays or white here. Surely we can use like our two earth reds plus some white, and we can use some of these mixtures in some of this painting for sure. Just looking at like some of these really bright colors here, we can probably dab a little bit in. It's really, really peachy, and we get a ton of like peachy red in these cheeks here, which I haven't even really addressed yet. It's almost like cadmium red in in some of these marks here that we can emulate with our earth red and alizarin. I want to pay attention to our sort of core shadow here. This isn't necessarily a portrait tutorial, but we can pay attention to some of this. Our sort of core shadow here is describing the plane change from the front plane of the head to the side plane. So we want that to sort of match the side plane right here, which is not fully on the side of the cheek here. It happens before the contour of the cheek, so somewhere around here. So we can push again that symmetry and that simplicity. We have some of this neck color. It's a little bit yellower than I probably have there, but it's all right. We have a pretty strong halftone color here. That's a pretty narrow halftone. It's pretty, like it's not a wide halftone. It's pretty tight. The color appears a little more greenish in this, the shadow where the blouse is, or the shirt, or whatever we want to call this thing. We just kind of mix it into our mixture there. That's kind of fun. It's kind of fun, isn't it? We can get really something close to a burnt umber color with our trans oxide brown and our Van Dyke brown. It gets a little more translucent by way of that, but it's a little bit darker than what do you call it? Burnt umber is. We can really, let's see how green we can get this black and white, because we have a pretty green background color there. We're limited in how dark of a yellow green we can get, because our yellows are pretty light, and we don't have a transparent yellow. If we had a transparent yellow, like trans oxide yellow or like Indian yellow, we could get a dark yellow green. But since these are light colors, they're always going to lighten in our mixture. So we may have a little bit of a limitation on how green of a green we can get this background color, but it's pretty green. It's just not as yellow green as I think the reference is there. Probably not a good idea to block in some of this hand, but the hand of the portrait, like, so it's its own thing. It's just as much work as a portrait. Putting a hand in a painting, it's like, I feel like if a professional portrait artist should charge, just as much for a hand in a portrait as a face. I got 3 heads and 7 hands in this portrait. That comes out on the calculator. I'm such a dork. I don't think I'm gonna leave that in. Getting kind of redder as we get into the thumb area here. All right, I think we're almost there. As much as I want to do with this this color sketch here. Not a bad way to practice color. Maybe one of the best ways to practice color is quick, low stakes activities here. Not a lot riding on it. We can just mess around, not to get all fussy-wussy with it. By getting into a little bit too much detail here. I'm getting a little bit worried here. I would like something to have a little bit of resolution, maybe, but I don't know if that's a good idea at all, because it's going to be like a style orphan to everything else that's very loose. All of a sudden we just have this like mouth there. This chin area is a little bit over blended, kind of a little bit clumsy looking. I'd like to get maybe a little, sometimes when that happens, we just need to get like a nice little piece of impasto to refreshen it. Refreshen? I'm certain that's a word. Restate that flat shadow value. Going back to that very greenish appearing form shadow here that we talked about at the very beginning. Pay attention to this shadow here is not as dark as these dark accents, these sort of occlusion accents, where we have the folds back here behind the ear. Which are really pretty dark. We got some small flourishes here. Flourishes. So reinforce the idea of it being this loose thing. We have a greater deal of variety, like these larger, simple, flat shapes, and these smaller, very small, thin shapes are creating this greater deal of variety for us to work with here. And it creates a sense of realism without fully going like doing a full master copy, you know. Right now, the contour of our head is suffering from lollipop syndrome, where we have this tendency to circularize the contour of the head. So we want to get away from lollipop syndrome by breaking this up a little bit here. That head, I haven't done a single measurement. That's insane. Why would I do this to myself? This goes up to the beginning of the sort of headband. Oh, yeah, this thing's going way up there. So our top of head, because she's kind of, head is tilted towards us a little bit, we're seeing more of the top of the head. That gets us away from some of the lollipop syndrome, which is something I just coined right now, actually. Hashtag lollipop syndrome, copyright 2025, Ben Valentine. This is truly the things that go on in my head when I'm painting. And there's a stream of consciousness of the chatter of 1,000 monkeys. I think painting would calm those voices down. Some people say it does. It doesn't for me at all. But it gives those voices something to sort of work on. It gives it a problem to work on. I think my mind just needs problems to work on. And if I don't have positive things to work on, then it starts like eating its own tail. And I'm sure many of you can relate to that. I know enough artists and creative types that we are all sort of a little bit neurotic. I want to push in the cheekular contour. So I can reestablish some of this wild kind of core shadow here. Pretty dark. Maybe a little too dark. A little bit way too dark. The only time you really see a core shadow this strong in an old master painting is when we have a strong reflected light object nearby. So we have that white shirt. So we're going to see that core shadow pretty strong. It can look kind of metallic if we do that incorrectly. Or if we overdo that, it has very much a look to it that can be kind of corny. Sometimes just straight black is really nice. It takes forever to dry, but if it's applied very thinly like this, then we're okay. I haven't, I don't know if you've noticed, but I haven't added any medium whatsoever. Just been painting this paint from the tube plus the lead white replacement recipe. I kind of do like painting on this surface. It's a kind of smooth. It's just like, it's basically an oil prime panel, but with like a patina to it and a cool sort of, texture and all that. So I think that's good enough to give a singular demonstration, a simple demonstration of what this palette's capable of. Let me know if you want to see me paint different types, different skin types with this palette to kind of show you that. I'd be interested if people are interested, people want to see that. Yeah, let me know if you'd like to see more stuff like this. Thanks for watching. I also have regular online classes. As long as this video is up, I have regular live online classes, Zoom classes that you can attend. The link to that is also in my description. And also be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification, and we will see you next time. So in case you were wondering, yes, I am scraping it off the panel at the end. I actually do 100% recommend this. If you have a wood palette, do these studies. Like I said at the very beginning, do 40 of them. You will improve insanely. It's only 40 hours, 1 hour on each one. You can do it. And the reason I'm recommending scraping them down is so you don't have to waste materials. You don't have to waste 40 different panels or 40 different pieces of canvas. You can do the same thing with a panel or a canvas. You can just wipe it down at the end, scrape it first, then wipe it with some linseed oil. And it'll get you over any kind of fussiness or preciousness that you may have with your supplies and paints and waste and all that. So get on it.